Hello and welcome back to Bicyclelegs Talks Music and another episode of Favorite Albums of All Time. And can you please welcome back to the channel John the MusicNut from John the MusicNut. How you doing today, John?
I'm doing great, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me back. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm really looking forward to discussing this album. This is unusual in this series because this is a live album that we're talking about. And the very first panel I ever did on this channel was where we talked about bands where our favorite album was actually a live album. And this was one of my examples when we did that panel. And the album is Under a Blood Red Sky by U2. And yes, I've got that box set too. It's got
Yeah,
the DVD in it as well as the album.
absolutely. Yes.
And
Excellent.
this is the Australian pressing and red vinyl.
Oh, nice. That's a beauty.
Yeah.
I love that.
It came out in black vinyl as well, but yeah, we got like there's a hype sticker on there for the Australian 1984 tour, and
Nice.
this was released to promote that. So this was released on the 21st of November 1983, and it was marketed as a mini album, which I
Yes.
think is funny because it's 35 minutes long. That's pretty normal album length when you think about it.
Yes, it is. And I always found that, I mean, because I remember when this came out back in 83, my neighbor across the street had this album. I didn't buy it until many years later, but he had the cassette, and it was weird that it was marketed as a mini album slash an EP, an extended play. And it's funny because I was thinking about that today. Why would they put it out as an EP? I'm wondering if it was because live albums at that time weren't in vogue because they were more about the video back in 1983.
Yeah.
And you had big studio albums, but you didn't really have really big live albums like you had particularly in the latter part of the 1970s, maybe a little bit in 1980 or so. So I'm wondering if that's why they did it. But yes, it's yeah, I mean, one more song and it would be just as long as the top albums that came out that same year.
Yeah, absolutely. This album did really well too. Like it got to number 28 in the US, it got to number 2 in the UK, and it got to number 2 here in Australia. But the sales figures, triple platinum in the US,
Mm-hmm.
triple platinum in the UK, 4 times platinum in Australia. So really successful album that this band was really building at this point in their careers. They were just going from strength to strength. And, the next album would sell even better. And then the album after that, well, they pretty much became the biggest band in the world by the time of the Joshua Tree. So,
Certainly.
but this is my favorite U2 album of all of them. And as we go into discussing this sort of track by track, I'll explain why this is my favorite U2 album. But funnily enough, everybody thinks of this album, they think of the Red Rocks video, the video shot live at Red Rocks. Only 3 of the tracks on this album are actually from the Red Rocks show. Um, no, I correct myself. Only 2 of the tracks are actually from the Red Rocks show. The majority of the tracks are actually from a show in Germany that was recorded for a TV show there called Rock Palast.
Yes.
And the video for that's probably available somewhere too, because a lot of those Rock Palast shows have cropped up on YouTube and things like that. And I've got various sort of bootleg DVDs of shows from the Rock Palast series. But
Nice.
yeah, it's an absolutely great live album. When did you first get into U2, John?
Okay, well, I first heard U2 when I Will Follow was the single in 1981, because back then our top 40 stations had their playlist, the top 40 songs they would play throughout the day. But from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m., when people were working third shift or they were sleeping, we would get deeper stuff. And that was when I first heard I Will Follow. That was when I first heard Gloria from the second album, October. So those songs I heard, I would never hear them any other time of the day because back then, 1981, 82, I was 10 or 11 years old. So that's when I first heard them. When War came out in 83, you heard Sunday Bloody Sunday, and New Year's Day frequently. There weren't really big hits, but by that point, I was listening to a lot more rock radio, and you heard them a lot on there. And I was getting a little bit into college radio, and you heard them a lot on there. They weren't high charting hits, but they got played often enough that you thought they were bigger hits than they were. Fast forward to May 1984, we get MTV in our house. And one of the videos you saw all the time was the live performance from Red Rocks for Sunday Bloody Sunday. And they would show the whole video when Bono would come out with the white flag and the crowd was all getting into it. And that was the first time I saw anything. First time I was aware of Red Rocks Amphitheater. And that was when the first time I visually saw U2. I didn't buy an album by them until Rattle and Hum.
Okay.
I didn't buy one until Rattle and Hum. I still have the cassette. But by the early 90s, I had War, I had Joshua Tree, Achtung Baby, and Rattle and Hum. But yes, to answer your question, it was 1981 for Boy, and I heard I Will Follow.
Yeah. Not a dissimilar story for me. The first
Okay.
song of theirs that I heard was Gloria. And
Okay.
it got played on we didn't have MTV, but we had sort of like Saturday morning clip shows that would show various, videos and that sort of thing. And we also had this show that would play on the weekend called Countdown, which was
Okay.
like the, premier rock show on Australian TV. And they would play, early U2 as well. And yeah, Gloria was the first one I remember hearing. And then, getting into New Year's Day and Sunday Bloody Sunday and things like that. I probably really got into them around Unforgettable Fire.
Okay.
And but I remember, yeah, they would play various of the songs from the Red Rock show on the Saturday morning clip shows and that sort of thing as well. So that was really it for me. And then I just remember when the Joshua Tree came out and how massive it was. Like it was just, they were big. They were a big band by Unforgettable Fire. But how big Joshua Tree was just stunning. And then I actually got to see them live on the Lovetown tour, which was the tour for Rattle and Hum after Rattle and Hum came out.
Oh, nice.
And it was the last tour that they played here in Australia where they played arenas rather than stadiums.
Okay.
But they played like three shows. Like I remember I was in line for tickets because for our younger viewers, back in the day, you used to have to physically line up to buy tickets to shows.
Yes, sir.
And I and a uni friend of mine were in line for tickets. And before we even got to the front of the line, the first show was sold out.
Mm.
So they put a second show on and they eventually put a third show on as well. And yeah, so it was the last time they played an arena rather than a outdoor stadium, which I'm glad because I don't do stadium gigs. But yeah, it was a wonderful show, and they brought BB King and his band with them to be the opening act. So it was
Nice.
absolutely wonderful. So
Oh,
that's kind of my U2 story.
I saw U2 once, and it was in 2017, and the poster over my shoulder is from that show. I
Oh,
wish I
cool.
could wear, thank you. I wish I could wear the t-shirt, but it shrunk up and I couldn't wear it. It was just too small. But it
Oh,
was the 30th anniversary of Joshua Tree, so they played four songs from earlier. They played Sunday Bloody Sunday and New Year's Day early in the set, and then they played Joshua Tree in its entirety. And that was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
yeah.
And it was a very good show. And at the encore, they were focusing more on songs from they played Vertigo from How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb, and they played a few songs from All That You Can't Leave Behind, including Beautiful Day. Very good show, but that was my only time. But I'm not big into stadium shows either. But if it's a certain band, it's a bucket list band, and I'll, I'll, I'll go through it. And
Yeah, fair enough.
that one I did. And that was, yeah, like stadium shows. It's once a year at the most for me at this point. I did it for Metallica earlier this year, and I had seen them, but I hadn't seen them in over 30 years. So I was going to do it this time around. But yeah, I've done less than 10 stadium shows in my life,
Mm,
and U2 was one of
yeah,
them.
fair enough. So
Yeah.
let's go through this album track by track, and it starts off with one of the songs that was recorded at Red Rocks, which Bono even announces during the song, and
Mhm.
that's Gloria. And great album opener, isn't it?
It certainly is. And it's interesting because for the first part of the tour, then they were promoting War at this point. The first many dates on this tour, they were opening with Gloria. And then later on, Gloria would be near third, the last third of the set. But Gloria is a kick butt opener. I mean, it was a great opener for the October album. And the one thing I
Mm.
think about all of these songs, you got the definitive versions of these songs. As good as the studio versions were on these, they were so hungry and energetic as a live band back at this time. And Gloria just starts the album off with a bang is excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say that too. Every song on here is the definitive version of that song. And I actually find, John, I love those first three U2 albums that were all produced by Steve Lillywhite. But I find the band a little timid in the studio on those first three albums. And I find that Steve Lillywhite is trying to add little bits and pieces that I don't think necessarily need to be there. Like I'll talk about that when we get to Sunday Bloody Sunday. But yeah, I just feel like the band hadn't quite found their feet in the studio yet. I think it took working with Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno for this band to really find itself in the studio and to be comfortable in the studio.
I agree with you on that. Yeah, they did sound particular on the first two albums. They were very, very young too. I mean, they were, you know, very early 20s at this point in those first two albums. I thought by War they were starting to gain their confidence as songwriters and as musicians. But yeah, it was like the moment may have been a little too large early on because the songs were very, very good. They were more post punk, but they feel unleashed when you hear them under a blood red sky. And there they
Yeah.
feel reined in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the band too. It's not Steve Lillywhite because I mean, you listen to some of
Great.
other, Steve Lillywhite's other productions. You listen to the albums he produced with XTC, for example.
Right.
Things like Drums and Wires and Black Sea. Those albums sound huge.
They do.
They sound absolutely ferocious. Whereas the albums that he did with U2, those early albums anyway, yeah, I feel like it's a very young band who don't really know their way around a studio, and that's why they're maybe not as good versions. But yeah, Gloria, absolutely brilliant opener. It's a great song to open a show with too. So it gets the album off to a great start. And then we get 11 o'clock TikTok, which a lot of fans wouldn't have known this song before this album because this wasn't on any of the albums. It was a single only release, and it was a very early one. It came out before Boy did, and so it wasn't a well-known song. But what are your feelings about 11 o'clock TikTok?
I've always enjoyed 11 o'clock TikTok, and I didn't know that what this was when it first came out back in the day. I had to find out many, many years later. Remember, there was no internet back then.
Hmm.
So you were at first when you saw this back in 1983 or 84, you were like, what's this 11 o'clock TikTok? Is this just some song that they had in the can and they just added this later? But no, it was one of their first singles. And 11 o'clock TikTok continues the momentum on here. It's very driving, very passionate, as you two were at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting song. I love the riff on this song. That ding
Yes.
ding 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 ding. It's a really great sort of driving riff. And then apparently I only read this recently. The lyric was based on Bono going to like a concert where there was like all these really sort of goth people.
Okay.
Um
That's
and that
good.
sort of thing. And he was sort of watching from the balcony, watching the crowd and that sort of thing. I can't remember off the top of my head which band was playing, but it was like a goth band, and
Right.
um, and he was watching the crowd rather than the band and just looking at the way that they sort of reacted to the music and behaved and all that sort of thing. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, it's an interesting. There's a couple of songs on here. We'll get to another one at the end of side one. Non-album songs on this live album. And I always love it when bands do that, when they bring out a couple of the obscure songs and add them to a live album and get them a little more notice. Um, but yeah, 11 o'clock TikTok's a really great song, but then wow, it just goes straight into I Will Follow from Boy. And what an incendiary version of I Will Follow this is.
Yes, this is so passionate. And the studio version's got a lot of fire itself, but here it really goes to another level. And this was a single here in the States. They re-released this as a single when Under a Blood Red Sky came out. It hit number 81 here. It didn't chart on the Hot 100 when it first came out here in the US. But yeah, this is a very riveting version, very driving, very, very spirited. Wonderful, wonderful bridge on this song. It's kind of short, but it's very, very memorable. But it's very driving. That guitar line from the edge on here, very, very memorable. Probably one of their best hooks as far as a guitar line, I would say, would be in I Will Follow, but very, very aggressive, yet it has a lot of hooks that will really bring you in.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what I get really sort of my ears prick up when I'm listening to this song is the bass line from Adam Clayton.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that really drives this song to me, that dung 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 dung
Yes.
dung 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 dung. It's an unusual bass line. It's not just playing the root note that you get in a lot of this sort of, post-punk kind of music that I Will Follow absolutely is. But it's a quite melodic bass line, and that's what my ears always get attracted to when I listen to I Will Follow, especially this live version of it. And I just love the way on a lot of these songs, the way that Bono introduces them, and this one he's just absolutely bellows out, "Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, I will follow." Um,
Absolutely.
the energy of it is so great. And yeah, I mean it's a wonderful song. The original version, as you say, is really good, but it's kind of, a bit naive, the studio version.
Over.
Whereas this is just full of energy, full of vim and vigor, and full of confidence, and that's what I love about it.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. Confidence is the perfect word to describe this in relative to the original that came out, boy.
Yeah. Then we get the other song that was a non-album song. In fact, it wasn't even a single, it was a B-side. And that's Party Girl. And it was originally called Trash Trampoline and the Party Girl. And it was the B-side to another very early single, Before Boy, which was called A Celebration. And I love that they included this song because it's a bit of a lighter moment compared with the rest of the album.
I agree with you. Yes, this is definitely the mellowest part of the album. This is the other song that was recorded at Red Rocks. And it's a little bit of a come down after you have like three bangers right in a row, but you have to have a part on a live album where you have to have ebb and flow. You got to slow down the pace a little bit for when you bring it back up again. This is a very well written song. It's not one of my favorite tracks on the album, but like you, I'm glad that this is here. It deserved to be on a studio album, in my opinion, because this is better than,
Mm.
as much as I like the first three albums, this is better than some of the deep cuts, particularly on the first two albums. So I'm glad that this is here, and I think it's very well done.
Yeah, and it shows a bit of a light-hearted uh, look into you too, that they're not all po-faced and serious. Especially, I always laugh in the guitar solo, because in the guitar solo on this version, the Edge plays a bum note. And as soon as he plays that bum note, Bono yells out, "Guitar Hero!" Just to
Yep.
bring everybody's attention to the fact that the Edge played a bum note. So I always love that about it. And also the fact that they leave the bum note in, there's no overdubbing on this record. It's all purely live. It's not being touched up in the studio or anything like that. And I love that about it too. And the fact that they would leave a mistake in like that just goes to show that they wanted to be authentic. And I love that about this early U2.
Yeah, back then they were serious. It was more about the message they were trying to put across. And they were singing a lot about what certain things that were going on in the world in certain parts of the country. And maybe their fans really, really admired that. And maybe that over the long term may have prevented them from getting to that next level of popularity. I thought that eventually they were talking more about universal themes on albums like Joshua Tree
Yeah.
and Rattle and Hum. And I thought that was part of taking them to the next level as well. But here it shows, yes, they were true to themselves, they were authentic, and they showed from maybe the first time they showed a bit of a sense of humor, if you think about it.
Mm.
Because later on, by the time they're doing Octung Baby and the Zoo TV tour, they weren't taking themselves very seriously anymore.
Mm.
This was a glimpse into the future if you really think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great closer to side one of the record. But then we get such a brilliant way to open side two with Sunday Bloody Sunday. And again, I don't know about your thoughts on this, John, but I think this version just, as much as I love the version on War, I think this one blows it out of the water.
I agree with you 100%. And you were talking about the bass of Adam Clayton on here. Hear that bass playing of his is really, really up in a mix. And it has more of an effect that it was up in a mix on the studio version, but here it has even more punch. That has that march feel that we have in here in that after Edge's solo. I mean, it really, really works on
Mm.
here. Excellent version. Love it. And
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, what?
I would agree it would be the definitive version as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the introduction for this song, it became kind of iconic, didn't it? There's been a lot
Yes.
of talk about this song, maybe too much talk. This song is not a rebel song. This song is Sunday Bloody Sunday. And yeah, it's such a great version. The studio version, I actually knew this version before I knew the studio version.
Okay.
And when I heard the studio version, they'd added violin to it. And like I
That's
really felt like it didn't need that.
no.
Um it's great just as the sort of three piece as far as the instruments go. Because I mean you've got Bono out the front, but musically they're kind of a power trio, aren't they? You know, guitar, bass,
Yes.
drums. And I think it works so well with just the guitar, bass, drums on this version that they didn't need the sort of little extra bits that they added and tacked on in the studio. So, um, yeah, great version. Then we get like a deep cut from the first album, which is the Electrico.
What a what a great guitar line on there. Very, very riveting. It's more in the punk vein at for this song, which is off of Boy. It's one of the last songs that's on the Boy album. This again is very, very riveting and driving. More power and more passion on this version because, like we were saying, confidence may not have been there in the studio when they were recording Boy back in 1980. But by this point, 83, they're in their element as a live band and getting more confident in the studio as well. But this is a wicked version. This kicks butt. It is awesome.
Yeah, it is absolutely great. One thing I will point out for our viewers, if you only sort of know like this box set version or later versions of this album, you're actually getting a slightly edited version of the Electrico. Because on the original version here on the vinyl, there's a bit in the middle where Bono is sort of extemporizing and improvising. And one of the things he does is he sings a small section of the song Send in the Clowns. And they did not get permission to have that on the record originally. And they actually had to pay out, I think it was $50,000 or something to
Correct.
the songwriters. And then later versions, they actually edited that part out of the song. So the version you get on a version like this is about 20 seconds shorter than it is on the original version. So that's something worth noting too. So if you can get an original pressing, or some of the very early CD copies apparently have the unedited version as well. So that apparently there's an Australian CD from early on that has the unedited version. So I'll have to try and see if I can find a copy of that. But
Good luck.
yeah, that's what Discogs is for. But
Right.
yeah, it's a great version of a song that I don't think got as much notice as it should have because I think it's one of the highlights on Boy.
I agree with that. It's definitely, I would say, one of the three or four best songs on that album. And when I was looking at the set lists from these shows that were the the shows that make up this album, they were hitting Boy pretty hard, even though we only got two songs on this album. But when I see what they put in here on Boy, there was a lot of songs that were on the set list, and they were all quite good. But Electrico and Gloria, I would say, are the two, def, probably two of the three or four strongest tracks on the album.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we get New Year's Day, which was the single off War. It was a big hit for them. I don't know how big a hit it was in America, but it certainly was here, and it certainly was in the UK and Europe. So, and again, they do a blistering version of it on here, don't they?
They certainly do. Very, very, very strong version. Now, here in the United States, it hit number 53. But like Sunday Bloody Sunday, you heard it enough that you thought it was a bigger single than it was. And what you have on here is you have a great hook in that piano line played by The Edge. And the bass line from Adam, you were talking about melodic bass lines. I think Adam's bass line, which is being complemented by Edge's piano, works very, very well. But then we also have the guitar solo on here, which is very, very lyrical after Edge stops playing the piano, goes into the guitar solo. It works very, very well. And the bridge is very cool, even though it's more ad-libbing from Bono than actually going into deep lyrics. I think it works very well as a hook in the song, but there's a reason this is one of their most enduring songs. I mean, there's just so many hooks on here, and with the piano on here, and I know that Edge played piano on a few of these tracks on the early albums, but here I think it's very, very effective. And again, I would take this over the live version. The live and the I'm sorry, the studio version. And the studio version has some effects there at the end with the vocals. We don't have that here. Here it's all the way live and it's more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a song that's near and dear to me because it was, one that I saw a lot. The film clip for it got played here a lot. Um, you know, I think in America in those early albums, like especially War, did well. That album did very well, but they were more an albums band than a singles band in the US until you get to sort of Pride and things like that.
That's
So
correct. Yep. Well, sorry to interrupt, but Pride, even that song only just grazed the top 40. It hit number 33. But again, it was played so much you thought it was like a top 15 single. The album went to number 12, did War. And it it sold 4 million eventually, but I think in its original run it may have gone platinum, but then it gained a lot more legs over the years because of how big those subsequent albums would be.
yeah.
And that was the videos from War got played. The video for New Year's Day is very memorable because it's that winter scene. But the first video that really got played heavy by U2 was Pride in the Name of Love.
Yeah.
But yeah, at that point, you're right. They were more of an album band and they got played heavy on college radio, not so much top 40 radio at this point.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But yeah, New Year's Day's always been one of my absolute favorite U2 songs, and the version they do here is great. As you say, Adam's bass again kind of carries the melody, while the Edge plays that lovely piano stuff, and then he gets onto the guitar. Bono sings up a storm on this song. And I remember when I was at university, I actually um, auditioned for a band. I wanted to be the singer in a band. And one of the songs that we did was New Year's Day. And unfortunately, I had a bit of trouble hitting those high notes, those really, really high notes. But yeah, suffice to say, I didn't get the job. But
You have a good job.
yeah, I love, love, love this song. But then it closes out with a song that's just, again, a perfect sh song to end a show with. And that's 40.
And this is a song that I feel is just so enduring. I wish they would play this more as a closer these days because they had retired it for many years, but throughout the 80s, it ended a lot of their shows that to the point where one member would walk off the stage, and another member to the point where the crowd was just singing that chorus over and over. What a message that brings.
Mm.
What I understand is they were short on studio time and they needed one more song. So they wrote this very, very quickly. And there's rumor stories about how they came up with the song title 40. And I've read that it was 40 minutes to create the song and with the studio and all that. I've read that it came from a passage in the Bible, Psalm number 40. But it's this also closes War, and it's a wonderful closer to a excellent live album here. It's very, very riveting, but again, it has a great hook in that chorus. Maybe not a song that you would release as a single,
Hmm.
but a way to end an album. Like as far as a closer, I think it works like a charm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the studio version did get released as a single, but only in Germany.
Okay.
So, um, yeah, it's a great song. The lyrics are definitely based on Psalm 40. I've actually looked it up and found the psalm and seen the lyrics that or the verses that Bono used for the lyric. So, but yeah, the sort of like I I I I think he said, yeah, it took 10 minutes to write, 10 minutes to record, 10 minutes to mix and 10 minutes to get out of the studio sort of thing.
Yes, that's it.
But yeah, I it's a great song and you gotta love the crowd at the end. You know, the band are off the stage, they've walked off and the crowd are just singing that how long to sing this song. It's and you know, you can imagine that they just kept going all night doing that, you know. And I love it to death. It's a great way to close a live album. It's a great way to close a show. And I agree. They should definitely bring it back to close out shows, you know, as the last song in the encore sort of thing.
I
And
agree.
but yeah, terrific. What an album. I mean, to me, this is just the perfect U2 album. Um, as much as I love all those 80s U2 studio albums, I love Achtung Baby, although I admit Achtung Baby took me about 20 years to get. When it first came out, I thought I admire this record. I admire that they're not making, you know, the Joshua Tree Part 2. But I didn't like it. It took me a long time to actually sort of get into that record, but now I think it's one of their best. And yeah, and then after that, you know, I mean, it got a bit spotty in some of those later records, but yeah, I mean, they still have a great record, but none of those studio albums beat this for mine. It's just my favorite U2 album.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that about Octung Baby. I bought that as a new release in 91 and I wound up getting rid of it
Mm,
because I thought the album was very top heavy. I thought the singles were very good, but I thought there was a lot of filler on it, particularly near the end of the album. And I probably got rid of that by the end of the 90s, maybe the early 2000s. And then I bought it again during the pandemic when we couldn't do anything besides buy music and watch YouTube. That's when
mm,
I went and I bought it again. And then I gained a greater appreciation. And I don't think it's not one of my favorite U2 albums. It's not one of the first ones I'll go back to, but I appreciate it more than I used to. And the later albums, yes, I'm more 80s U2, but there's a lot of great songs on the latter day albums, and I do appreciate them more. Eventually, I bought all the. I don't have the newest album, but I have all the others because I was part of it because I wanted them, and part of it was I was also doing the U2 series on Ryan's Final
mm,
Destination, so I picked up those albums. But me, yeah, for me it goes 80s U2, and I love Rattle and Hum, and I know that's a contrarian
mm,
album. A lot of people, that's an album that's either very much enjoyed or very much maligned. And that was, this is like, if you want to, this is the live album for U2 because that
yeah,
album was half live, half studio. And what I was reading is they did put out a live album, but it was in 2007 as part of the 20th anniversary of the Joshua Tree, and it was part of a box set.
yeah.
And they never released that as a vinyl or a CD. They released it as a download that I believe you're only able to get on iTunes. And that was a retrospective album too. It was from the Joshua Tree tour.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you have it, everyone. Those are our thoughts on U2's Under a Blood Red Sky. Please do let us know in the comments what you think of this album, where it stands as far as U2's catalog goes, and all that sort of thing. John, thank you so much for doing the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. To all of my viewers, if you are not already subscribed to John the Music Nut, please go and correct that immediately. I will leave a link in the description as I always do. He does a whole series on live albums called The Live Cut. He asked me to be a guest on one of those episodes. We did a Warren Zevon's Stand in the Fire. That was a lot of fun to do. So please do go and subscribe to John the Music Nut because he's got a lot of really, really good content.
Thank you, Daniel.
Please do like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted, so if you want to have a look at some of my other favorite albums of all time shows, I have a playlist for those. If you want to see some of my studio albums ranked shows, I have a playlist for those. And if you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, like John the Music Nut, I also have a playlist for those. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram, Twitter, and a bunch of other places. I also have dedicated bicyclelegs Facebook page and bicyclelegs merch. Links are all in the doobly-doo. Please do give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.